Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and we're back once again. I already recorded the video regarding Christian Kirk, Devin Duvernay, Evan Ingram, but two things. One, they released Ronald Darby during that video, and second, I forgot to discuss the Mitch Morse retirement from earlier. So many things happened, it just slipped my mind when I was recording. So we want to discuss that as well, and kind of what this means for the cap. Going to take a big look at it here and maybe how much money the Jaguars really have to spend this season, which is a lot more than what they had previously. We'll go ahead and just spoil that if you didn't already know. But we'll start with Ronald Darby, who just got released today. I don't believe he had much of any guarantees on his final season. So we'll take a look at his performance from last year, which ultimately was not good. Right? He was replaced by Montaric Brown later in the season. And, you see a lot of up and down here. Some good performances, but just not a great season overall for him. You especially look at how he did in Baltimore and his last year in Denver, what earned him this pay this season, and he just didn't live up to it, right? And he's had injury concerns throughout his career. He's becoming an older player, and with the new regime, was going to be someone that they considered expendable. Now, we'll take a really quick look, because I forgot to bring this up for the video, at guaranteed money. If he had anything left, that might alter a little bit of what we're talking about here. There was $1.25 million that was guaranteed. So I will fix that really quick on here. So that'll just that'll change the amount of dead cap. So that is correct now. And we'll take a look at this at the very end. But ultimately, with Ronald Darby, you had you had Montaric Brown, stepped up this year, had a really good season for the Jaguars, and I think is someone who could play either scheme, whether man or zone, and it just made too much sense to have him be the backup. And if you're going to be beat out by that type of player, then you're probably not going to earn your contract, even if it's not a whole ton of money, right? He wasn't earning anything too insane, but about $4 million a year was what we were looking at with him. It was 4.25 a year. So he'll get ultimately a little bit more than that for last season, just because some guarantees come into this year. But ultimately, this was a move that was probably coming from Jacksonville, and they're going to probably look for someone else to add to that cornerback room at the end of the day. It'll also be interesting to see what they do with Jarion Jones. I think he's a good starting nickel for sure, but they may opt to play him outside. They may have Darnell Savage return there this year. They may also just not really care what Darnell Savage is wanting to do and may just see him as a player they got to keep for a year. Maybe how they feel about Gabe Davis, some of those players, because we've already seen them obviously cut a few of those signings from last year. And the other one, Mitch Morse. So we're going to talk about him for a second. I don't know if he was going to get cut or what. It was definitely a possibility. There was about $4 or $5 million that was unguaranteed that he had left. And so that could have happened. But he ultimately retires from the NFL and is stepping away from the game. So what's good, I want to make sure I'm not just ignoring the career he had, right? Mitch Morse played a long time in the NFL. I did 10 seasons. It says he played with the Chiefs, the Bills, and 1 year with the Jaguars. He was a Pro Bowl caliber player and really good throughout his career. In Jacksonville last year, it wasn't exactly what you're hoping for. I think as a player, there's always been questions about what he's done in the run game. It's never been more than average at best, and you needed to make a change there. The concern, of course, is who is that change going to be? What options do you have? There's Drew Dalman out there. We talked about him in the free agency video. He's going to cost a lot of money. His price is getting driven up by the day. And your other option is maybe taking a great Zabel. Maybe you trade back, you take Will Campbell, and you play him at center, which I think is a little rich, right? JPJ, I would have drafted maybe at 17 last year. Would I take a center that much higher that hasn't played the position? I don't know. Will Campbell's a great offensive lineman, but there's some questions about that. Or maybe you get a Jared Wilson or a Marcus and Bo. There's some options, but there's no home run obvious direction to go for the Jaguars at the position. Now, what is nice for Jacksonville from the retirement, we'll take a look at really quick here, why this is a big deal. You have 1.5 million that was guaranteed for this year, which may have come into play as far as whether he was going to continue playing for the Jaguars or not. And that ultimately means that how much you could have saved if you just released him was going to be less than if he retired. So the retirement gets you out of that guaranteed money. And ultimately, as a team, you end up saving a little bit more than you expected to, which is this plus this, which is 4.65 million. So, actually, yeah, 4.65 million because you got the workout bonus as well. So Jacksonville saves a little bit more than expected, although it's, not a huge amount. It's 1.5 million, but anything is good. So where does this leave the Jaguars right now? Well, you have a lot less players, of course. You moved on from quite a few today. But when you look at the situation, and we talk about this in our videos, I'll kind of explain it again. As far as what the cap space is, of course, 70 million. Now we're projecting something around there, maybe a little bit higher on some different sites. There's context to why the numbers vary at the end of the day. And you see this includes the rookie pool. So that's why this number is a little bit different, because you're already factoring in what you'd be paying for all of your draft picks. You also factor in what they're going to cost per year, as far as what you're really setting their value at. Now, the numbers that really matter to me, and I've made this argument quite a bit on this channel, and I'm a firm believer in this, but I think more than the cap hit, what matters the most is the amount of money the NFL is giving you to spend each year, which is what the salary cap is. Don't include rollover, just what are you being given? What's your allowance, essentially? And then what are you paying the players per year? Because cap hits can really skew how we see the cap, and it can really screw it up. So we may think, oh, Trevor Lawrence, 17 million a year, that's awesome. Well, that extra money that he's really getting paid is going somewhere else, right? And when you look on his contract, you look at all the void years on there, you look at 2029, 2030, and all that, and then you factor in that they're bringing in the 5th year option, and they just paid him a little bit extra last year as well, where it was going to be part of his rookie deal, was the 4th year of it. That's why you get some lower numbers here. But as far as the value and what he's set at, this was the 5th year option season, and this was the value they agreed he was worth. Now in 2026 and beyond, he's worth 55 million a year. So that's where this changes, and you see the number go up. But what this means is essentially that's how much of the allowance that you're spending on that player for that portion of their contract. And what you want to do is ideally balance it out with this comparable cost, which is the salary cap for the year, which is a little bit higher than this. I'll have to update these numbers. So add on about 6 million here and even more cap space, because it is not 273 million. It's like 279.2. But the Jaguars right now are in a situation where you've got about 49.5 million when you make that change that you could still spend this year. So you're in a good position as far as your spending per year, because now you're underspent, right? In the past, they got very aggressive. They overspent a bit in 2022, even in 2023. Now they're in a good situation, and this enables you to either take advantage of it, go sign some big-time free agents, or take a year where maybe you try to clean up the cap a little bit. And I personally have no problem with that. If they want to take that approach and say, hey, we're going to just focus mainly on building this thing through the draft, we're just going to sign maybe some older veterans that are going to cost something fair, and we're not going to blow all our credit card on it, right? Say you get a Kevin Zeitler for $6 to $8 million. He plays at a high level, but you're not spending a ton of money. If they take that approach, I'm all for that. That's personally where I would be going with this. But they have money to spend. They have moves they can make. And this, of course, also factors in this amount here, right? That 20 million that you're going to have allocated to your rookie pool. So that's the nice part about this ultimately, is that the Jaguars are in a really healthy situation now with the cap because of these moves. And when we entered this, it was really a matter of, This number was zero. It was around there. And any moves they made to release players or trade players or to cut players was going to give them the money they could spend. And if they spent any more than they released, they were going to be in a bad cap situation for the season. Although, of course, you have a lot of cap manipulation you can do. You can get aggressive with it like the Saints have, but there's eventually consequences because you're borrowing from your future. And eventually you're going to have to pay that off, or you're not going to have the flexibility to take advantage of the extra cap space you have, right? Then maybe you can't go all in a few years because you already went all in. So those are my thoughts on that, but I always bring this up because I want to have full context, and the full context is not just 2025, but it's also 2026 and beyond, right? I want to keep that in vision because it's fun to sit here and say, let's sign every free agent in the world. If you do that, there's consequences down the road. We saw that in 2023 when this team hadn't re-signed anyone yet, and they were $30 million over the cap entering the offseason after being in the best cap situation of every team in the NFL. So you see both sides of it, but ultimately, this is where things stand. Now, before we wrap this up, I'm going to just make sure nothing else has happened here, because who freaking knows at this point. And I don't think there has been anything else, so I just want to make sure I don't have to record for a third time in a row here. But yeah, a lot of things going on today. Congrats once again to Mitch Morse on his retirement. Want to make sure we say that. But with that said, we're going to wrap this up. Shout out to our channel members: Premier Seer 904, Nightmare Eco, Gator John Bites, Scrubber Ducky 500, Frangies, and Brian Foster. I appreciate all your support. I appreciate all of you guys watching. Let me know what you think, your thoughts on these moves, where the Jaguars should go from here. How do you feel about it? And I'll make sure to get back to you in the comments. So once again, thanks for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.